When you first saw Halo, were you blinded by its majesty?
Blinded?
Paralyzed? Dumbstruck?
Nah. I was haunted by it. Halo is a weird franchise. It holds a special place to me as Halo Combat Evolved was one of the first games I ever played when I was younger, and it remains to this day one of my favourites alongside its sequels. But you truly never really know what you're going to get with the release of the next Halo game. You don't know if the story of the previous game is going to be continued, and yet despite this, I still love the franchise to this day. And as such, with the recent announcement of the Halo remake, I have decided to take on the franchise's hardest achievements, which are completing the campaigns on the hardest difficulty with all skulls on. Now, for those that don't know, a skull in Halo is a gameplay modifier, which may be good, may be bad, but Lasso, as it's colloquially called, is mostly the bad skulls, and it elevates the already challenging legendary difficulty to whole new levels. The first step on our journey is the Pillar of Autumn, which is a relatively straightforward mission that showed me just how much explosions are increased by the Boom Skull and how much the Grunt Funeral Skull can be used to my advantage. The first portion of this mission is just walking to Keys whilst tanking explosions and blissfully skipping by all the Marines who are just fighting for their lives. After Keys gives me a weapon, the real gameplay begins, which sort of just means I'm cowering behind cover waiting for a Grunt to come around the corner so I can chain react him to all of his Grunt buddies. After clearing out the canteen of anything moving thanks to more chain reactions, I make sure to scavenge as much ammo as possible as the famine and recession skulls make ammo conservation incredibly important, especially since Master Chief has decided to take an oath of honour and not even lay a finger on Covenant weaponry. Most of this mission is just shooting a singular grunt and watching the chaos unfold, which I think probably gave me some false confidence about the difficulty of this, which, believe me, gets crushed very quickly. Mainly because I'm an idiot. Two valuable lessons were learnt during this mission. The first one being, do not trust your Marine allies, they are out to get you. Did I just get team fragged? And secondly, always make sure that when you die to save and quit to circumvent the Iron Skull. After replying the mission back to where I was, I soldiered on, taking advantage of explosions before making it back to the landing room where I struggled to work out who to prioritise, and unfortunately had another death. Luckily though, the second time around, things worked out a bit nicer, the chain reactions were a lot more fortunate, going my way, and it got to the point where the final enemy was just hiding behind a pole, so I could just run away very kindly. I ran into these two elites who just decided to team up and torment me, but I just hiding behind this pole, absolutely melting me over and over again. The AI in this game is just very smart and it knows how to punish you effectively, but it's just never in the way I want to be punished. But I managed to push through the darkest rooms ever created by mankind and took my revenge on those pesky elites before entering the darkest tunnels created by mankind and getting a bit risky with my fights. Which then led me to my first stumbling block, which was really just an intelligence test that I was failing repeatedly. So all I had to do was just walk to the end of this corridor and teach that elite who the boss is, but I was quaking in my boots, and the elite, he could smell my fear, he knew. So I spent quite a bit of time trying to lure the elite into the room with the grunts, but he just understood that, and he just wanted to make my life miserable, to be honest. I confronted my demons, I had to progress towards the end of the mission with 1 HP and a dream. And the dream was just use the assault rifle, to be honest, which then led to a classic low IQ moment from me, which we're just getting used to at this point. For God's sake. I've died to my own stupidity. I've just pressed restart. After restarting for the second time, I really started to believe that maybe save quitting is the hardest skill check in this, and you know, maybe I'm just not cut out for that. If you don't know, the Iron Skull makes it so if you die, it resets the level in solo, but you can save and quit to get around it. Ending the first mission with a total of 2 resets, 10 deaths, and to be honest, a delusional level of confidence that maybe this won't be as hard as I initially suspected. We go into the second mission, Halo, where, to be honest, that delusional confidence just gets compounded even further. Halo starts with the realization that I have turned into a giant green pinball and murdered every single marine on that life craft, which is surprisingly the theme of this mission. I tried to do a grenade jump that skipped some of the enemies spawning, but I was too slow, so it was a waste of time really. After clearing out the enemies that wouldn't have existed if I just did the jump fast enough, I get to the main structure where the marines are hiding out. Although, to be honest, saying getting to the structure is a bit of an understatement because I just hide on this giant rock, as the enemies will not push you here and you can just safely pick them off while the marines wonder why the Master Chief is regarded as a hero. I then grab ammo before retreating back to the rock, as it then becomes a sort of wave defense minigame where you just sort of have to sit and kill. I think it's 5 waves of enemies, and it really isn't that exciting, I'm going to be honest. You just sit there on this rock, sort of feeling like SpongeBob, you know, it's not a boulder, it's a rock. Whilst I'm defending this lovely rock, I wanted to mention how as a kid I loved this mission so much, but now I sort of feel a bit torn about it. That feeling of taking, you know, your first steps on the Halo will never be matched, but I just found the rest of the mission to be a little bit repetitive. But I suppose that's just me and getting old. This is a bit of a philosophical video now. Here I jump out of the Warthog to activate the bridge because this minimises my chances of being rushed by 3 very angry elites, and you know, we want to be as safe as possible here. I leave this marine to fend for himself before juggling weapons from the crash ship back to him, as it allows me to do an infinite ammo glitch. Sadly, he doesn't survive, but essentially reloading and picking up a weapon at the same time allows you to not use any reserve ammo, which is very helpful in most situations. This easily allows me to clear out the enemies outside the structure before I go in and commit what can only be described as a war crime.
Marty, he's killing the Marines!
The checkpoints in this mission don't actually require you to save any Marines, and they will complete even if they all die, so in my case it's actually just more efficient to sacrifice them for my cause. I then hop back into my Warthog before deciding to go AFK and getting my only death in this mission, which was a pesky Banshee which I did not know existed in the area. It gave me an absolute heart attack when it shot a little Banshee bomb at me. And yeah, now I know if you just sit there, a Banshee just appears and starts harassing you, which is a bit rude, but you know. These Marines I actually leave alive, as I don't want them to brandish me as a traitor and start absolutely eviscerating me. So I pick 2 of them up and wait for the 3rd one to die. So when I drive off with them, the 2 in the vehicle don't count as alive for some sort of spaghetti code reason. So this allows me to progress with the mission quite nicely. I kick the Marines out of the Warthog and leave them waiting for the next passing Spartan, as my strategy for the final segment involves driving through the rocks to pick up 2 Marines. One of them is a sniper wielding demon who has spent his entire life waiting for this moment. Like, when I say this guy is on another level, I mean it. He literally does all the heavy lifting for me here. The guy in the gun barely does anything. This sniper marine, genuinely, I don't know, he's trying to audition to be in Phase Clan, I think. But after we clear everything out, we can happily get onto our Pelican knowing that we've tried our hardest to save every possible marine we could. You know, we left no stone unturned for these guys. I was actually like delusionally confident after finishing this mission. Like, I was just there thinking, wow, this is actually really easy. Truth and Reconciliation broke me. It taught me humility. It showed me that I truly needed to reflect on what I was doing to ensure I was going into every situation in the most advantageous way. Like, I died so many times during this mission due to my own stubbornness, and I honestly think that this mission made me reevaluate how I view and approach things in real life. Like, this might sound really dramatic, but genuinely, this mission defeated me for like a whole day. So we clear out this initial area and we try to conserve as much sniper ammo as possible. If you're playing the mission normally, this isn't a concern, but genuinely on this, you need as much sniper ammo as possible at all times. Otherwise, later on, it's just impossible. And then I run into these two jackals, and they have literally the most aggressive trigger finger I've ever witnessed in my life. And to be honest, I struggled here for a bit, as you can see with this incredibly comical moment. Oh, you motherfucker. What I was trying to do was hide behind this rock and take down the enemies further down the path. But as you can see, I'm incredibly low health, and I make this vital mistake of rushing the health packets down there and picking up all the ammo at the same time, which later on causes me massive problems. But we hide in this tree to take out the remaining enemies, and then to sort of forget everything I've learned so far, earning myself quite a very avoidable death, which, to be honest, there's quite a lot of them at this point. Oh god. I go back to gobble up even more sniper ammo because I'm an incredibly wasteful person, and I get to this ridge section where there is a very cool trick. If you kill these two jackals and a specific grunt and elite, you can run past everything else and it should despawn the enemies, which makes a later segment significantly easier. However, this was a really difficult concept for me to understand with my small tiny brain, so I actually just end up killing a bunch of enemies, which results in me getting stuck in a horrible loop later on. I run up to behind the trees where the elite was, since there's an active camo there. You know, sort of blissfully unaware that I'd messed everything up for this trick, and I proceed to run by all the enemies. But then I sort of appear to have an existential crisis halfway through, and I turn back to kill some of the enemies, which this in turn gives me a checkpoint, which is horrible, we did not want this, and it wastes my camo duration. So I end up getting crushed by this turret, which I didn't know could actually happen, and this sort of begins the loop of death that I get stuck in for a very long time. This death counter starts becoming incredibly inaccurate because I could not keep track of everything. I was losing my mind. So the idea I had to begin with was to take out the first elite in the turret before dropping down to get the health and ammo, then turn back around and kill all the enemies I'd skipped. However, this sort of just doesn't work, as I want to hide in the little crevice where I had an existential crisis, but since I didn't do the earlier trick properly, I just got stuck between a rock and a hard place, and this was my main dilemma here. From here, we just have a fantastic death montage of me getting incredibly tilted, which, to be honest, doesn't stop when this finishes. But finally we got a run which the stars aligned for. I cleared out the enemies both in front and behind me, as well as sacrificed all the marine reinforcements because, to be honest, they caused me way too much drama at this point. They love grenades, they will kill you at every opportunity. I then cleared the wave defensive section up till the final wave, but I did it mainly using my sniper rifle, so for the final wave I had no ammo at all. So this final wave is a pair of hunters. And now the hunters die in one sniper and magnum shot, but I didn't have access to either, so it's not really very helpful. Needless to say, this didn't go well. A miracle occurs here. The spawning of the hunters is delayed for whatever reason. Truly, I have no idea what does this. And it allows me to safely grab the ammo and then get back so I can kill the hunters. I mean, I was baffled by this, but I just chose to take advantage of it because after however, like, countless deaths, like, my mental state was at an all-time low. I needed to be inside that ship, and I finally was inside that ship. What I didn't realise is that I was completely ill-equipped for this first ship fight. You need copious amounts of RNG on top of as much sniper ammo as possible, as you sort of want to kill the elite who comes out the door, sneak in behind him through the doors, and then hide back there until all the enemies have spawned. Now, after this, you want to use the explosions from the grunts to kill as much enemies as possible in the room, because by God, there are a lot of them. And after a couple of attempts, I began to realise I did not have the capabilities to get past this part without insane RNG. I needed more sniper ammo. I needed to restart the mission. And as such, after a final Hail Mary run, I swallowed my pride. I undid my work thus far, and before taking the most important step, I cleared my mind, I went to bed, and decided that I would take on this challenge, well, the following day, it's with a clear mind as possible, and most importantly, from the beginning. Through some incredible RNG, we had made it through all of the ship fight, with a few extra deaths, yes, but most importantly, a checkpoint. With the hunters spawned in, I was under the assumption that I needed to go to the big door to trigger dialogue to then progress the mission. However, I am just blind, because the way I needed to go was open right in front of me. And so I realised this, I grabbed the camera, and I snuck past everything with the biggest smile on my face imaginable. The route past the enemies is fairly simple, as long as you just do not touch any enemy, as there's nothing that makes them angrier, understandably so, than not asking for consent. There is more ammo on the way as well. I learnt that during this mission, it actually just feeds you sniper ammo all the time. You just need to conserve it well enough to get to the next supply. After clearing out the corridors, I tactically hide from the dropship before taking out everything in the hangar. This then leads to an overshield on the far side, as well as a grenade jump, which took me a fair few attempts, but I did eventually complete. And this jump despawns a large chunk of enemies and makes the mission end earlier because... reasons? I'd be lying if I said I understood why this worked, but it's honestly a key part in completing this mission, so, you know, no questions asked. This big room can be a little tricky because of the gold elite. He's a very angry fella, but as soon as he's dealt with, everything else falls very easily. I clear out the corridors and then get to Keys' prison, which again has another gold elite who is equally as angry, and, you know, take him out. Before I save Keys, I go back to pick up ammo, even though there's some in his room, but I forgot about that. I save Keys, which he seems very grateful for, before sending him to an early grave as I throw quite literally the worst grenade ever done by mankind, and then whiff the elite before we all explode. The second time around, Keys gets punched in the face, and he's probably wondering why I'm trying to save him. But on the third attempt, we actually get him out of there, we clear the corridors as a team, and I run away to pick up camo and ammo because I know the Marines could turn on me at any moment. These three invisible elites fall, and that is just the mission done. Because of the earlier grenade skip, it breaks the mission ends early, and I am there, pleased and happy. The next three missions are thankfully so much faster, so it's sort of time for a speed run. I run away from the Marines who are storming Normandy to go straight for a Warthog and clear out as much of the facility as possible. This will allow me to drive the Warthog through the facility, which I do after grabbing some health. Essentially, there's a sneaky little trick where you can fling yourself through the door with the warthog, which, since it's me, you can imagine how well that went the first time around. I've literally never done this before. We get it in the end though, we've successfully skipped a good chunk of the mission, and as a reward, I then throw myself off the map because there is a speedrun trick for doing this, which saves even more time, but I'm just simply not built for that. I get caught in two minds about fighting or running from this first group of enemies. Eventually I do choose run, but they've hurt my feelings enough to the point where I have 1 HP, and to be honest, going down the drop I had haunting visions of the fall damage just killing me. It results in me having to absolutely bamboozle a jackal so I can get a health pack, which then allows me to clear the hunters and the rest of the jackals from this room. I go back for the other health pack before I inexplicably get lost and end up in the first room again, where I lose my shields because I start clearing out the enemies, and I sort of have the realization of, oh, I shouldn't be here, so I get back on the right path. I hug the outside of the structure as I can fall to the level below, which allows me to land on an overshield, which gives me nice safe protection from all the enemies down there that I need to get rid of, before I then activate the silent cartographer. I find this weird bird thing, God knows what that is, before heading back up, killing jackals and grenade jumping myself onto an active camo. This camo then gets me back to the first room, which I carefully clear everything out of, again, like the third time I've tried to do this now, before running into my good friend, the Angry Goldolly, who introduces himself in the proper formal manner you'd expect. I take advantage of his courtesy before hopping in the warthog, driving through all the corridors, running over a fella and finishing the mission. Honestly, the silent cartographer was just a truly good all-round time, and that continues again into the next mission. Assault on the control room is the shortest mission in this game. Now, if you've played this game and you're not really up to date with your speedrunning tactics, you might be a bit confused by this. But as soon as you clear out the initial enemies and the sort of room afterwards and get onto the bridge, you can do a neat little trick that takes you all the way to the end of the mission with no other enemies spawning. It took me a fair few attempts to get this trick down, but as soon as you get it done, you just steal the Banshee and you just fly to the end of the mission, no questions asked. I imagine without this mission would be horrible, to be honest, but yeah. Easy done, on to the best mission in the game. Shout out to Halo Completionist, by the way, for teaching me how to do this. He has a really good guide for all the lassos, so yeah, definitely check that out. 343 Guilty Spark is the best mission in this game, in my humble opinion. There aren't any major tricks to get through this one quickly. Well, technically there are, but I'm not good enough to do them. But it is a fairly quick mission. I run off to the side of spawn and jump up some rocks, which sort of just lets me get to the spooky building faster. And then when I'm there, I run in, activate the lift, and descend into the horrors below. The horrors in this case is just 4 jackals that are absolutely ready to pounce on me, but they sadly don't know who I am and they catch these hands. I run through the next segments killing the odd enemy, but honestly I'm just running to get to the reveal part. Like, I don't have a care in the world. After I take my revenge against a marine, I get to the famous room and the franchise's main enemy are revealed. The Flood. I clear out the waves of the Flood before throwing a grenade to sort of hopefully take out a few combat forms, but mainly just to distract them, as I continue with my incredible Grandmaster plan of just running past all of us. I do not have a care in the world. I do not want to fight these guys. They will just obliterate me. I jump up this box whilst the Flood and the Covenant just have a big old fight, before eventually running myself to the lift, which sort of just decides that going up is for losers, so it takes me further into the facility. But on the plus side, there is an overshield down where it takes me, so, you know, extra health, always take that. I run to the active camera because you cannot have too many power-ups and I'm greedy. I then fail a skill jump and have to go the long way around. After making it to where this jump would have took me, the Flood decide that I shouldn't be allowed a shotgun and just beat the living daylights out of me, and I get my first death in honestly a fair few missions. I pick off everything from the other side of the bridge since the Flood don't understand how to cross it yet, and get onto the final lift, which takes me up to the surface where some Marines are just stood around waiting for me. I choose to repay their lack of helping me by just running off to the left and hiding behind whatever on earth this building is supposed to be, before eventually, you know, just I think it's the Sentinels dying is what makes this mission end. And yeah, the mission ends. From the best mission to the worst mission. The library is a long, repetitive slog, which is definitely one of the harder missions in the game, mainly because of the length and because of the dreaded rocket flood that you encounter later in the mission. From the beginning, I grenade jump at the start just to skip a few enemies before I get to the first door, which is sort of where the length of this mission comes from. There's a lot of these doors, and you just have to stand there for like however long it is. It feels like an eternity. The section directly after this first door was genuinely the hardest part of the mission for me. My initial plan was to just run past it, or to get the shotgun, run past everything. Sort of in the same way I did in the previous mission, but the Flood had cottoned on to that thinking, and they didn't really agree with that plan. After this failed, I decided to take it slow and to try and pick off the first wave and then run past everything, which in my mind was working really well, but I clearly underestimated just quite how many Flood would spawn in, and I just kept trying to kill them all, so I got overwhelmed very quickly. But the compromise of killing some and then just running for it seemed like a good idea, and it did get me a checkpoint and also a whole host of deaths. Like, oh, some of the deaths are comical. But after setback after setback, I got a lucky run and made it past the first corridor of the level, which is a bit tragic to say. But to be honest, any straight up fight with the Flood is just horrible. They leap at you, they whack you from so far away. Like, and in this level, they have guns, they start shooting back at you. Like, the best tactic is to kill the carriers and hope the explosions takes out a fair few combat forms, but then even that has flaws, like they might just resurrect and start whacking you a bit more. Honestly, the Flood in this game really fit their role well. They just overwhelm you constantly. I pick up the health pack, which thankfully are honestly pretty generously scattered throughout the level, and then I get on the nastiest head glitch I've ever seen, and you know, just start giving them a bit of the old COD 4 experience, you know, they don't know what's hitting them. To be honest, a lot of this mission is sort of just patience, and after the Truth and Reconciliation, I might be the most patient man alive. The most common tactic I use is simply just to run forward, spawn the enemies, and then run back and kill them one at a time, which, you know, didn't always work, but it was just sort of a good general approach to things. I grabbed the overshield and proceed to do my classic strategy of just start running past everything. The Flood are a bit baffled by corners and ledges, so you can sort of just run past them, and if you get around the corner, they're just baffled by what's going on. And I get to a certain point which spawns in Sentinels, which defend me, or, I mean, to put it better, they just distract the Flood and I run off again, and I make it to the first lift. There are 4 of these lifts I need to do, and the first one was painful. I think it was definitely probably the worst. Floor 2 starts with some nice med packs, which to be honest we will never turn down, before letting my Sentinel friends do all the heavy lifting once again. We then have our next star, which spawns infinite Flood, unless you do what I do and just sort of stand on this weird ledge thing, in which case only a couple enemies spawn and they get taken care of by the Sentinels. The door then opens to the big main room, which I decide to traverse the long way, as yet again, no enemies will attack me doing this. I will always pick the scenic route if it means I do not have to fight things, and this is a pacifist run of the library now. Spending more time just standing around that door patiently, I have to end my pacifist lifestyle to take out a couple enemies who were just ready to pounce me. I get to go through these tunnels, which really aren't very interesting, but at least they look different to everything else in this level so far. And then this leads me to the corridor of the carrier farms, which thankfully isn't too bad. And it also gives me a rocket launcher, which, given the infinite ammo glitch that we were doing earlier on Halo, helps me a great deal throughout the rest of this mission. I can just, every time I fire a shot, pick up a different weapon, throw that weapon on the floor, or the rocket launcher on the floor. It'll not count the ammo when it reloads. I don't know why it works, but it does. I make it to floor 3, and more importantly, we're over halfway done with this mission. But the third floor chooses violence by not only killing me repeatedly, but also gobbling up weapons that I'm using to have infinite ammo. Like, they just fall through the floor. It then goes back to killing me some more as coming out of these tunnels is oddly difficult, as I couldn't really work out what I wanted to do. So there's a door just after this segment, and the enemies from the door would kill me if I left too many enemies behind me alive, but I didn't want to kill the enemies behind me, which is sort of the issue. Luckily, I got an attempt where the sentinels took care of the enemies behind me and I could focus all my attention on the enemies in front of me before I could then stand on another ledge, which stops everything spawning in once again. The door opens and there's another handy dandy med pack, followed by me killing a few enemies just to get an extra rocket ammo or two as a sort of safety net, as you can mess up the infinite ammo glitch, and I do quite a lot. I take the scenic route again. Luckily, the next door is open, so I can just waltz straight through without waiting for the floating light bulb to open it. I take care of the following enemies and reach the next door, which I sadly do have to wait for, but thankfully, I can just stand in this corner and the enemies don't recognise me as existing for some reason. And then when the door opens, they aggro the sentinels, so I can take them all out very safely. I gather up the ammo dropped before getting an absolutely massive multi-kill with the rockets, and then sadly a carrier chooses to deny me entry to the final elevator. Second time around I make it up despite this carrier's best efforts, and we are on the home stretch. I complete my lift ride and I grenade jump through this door before picking up a med pack and hiding in another corner, which makes me invisible once again. Once the door opens, I run to safety, dodging bullets like I'm Neo for the Matrix, before turning back and taking care of the chasing enemies. I progress through to the final door where the entire Flood Horde appears just to be waiting for me. Like, they swarm me, they come from all directions, and when you're killing them, the carrier farms just get flung all over the place, which, to be honest, is stress-inducing to say the least. It cannot quite be stated just how many ways there are to die here. If you stop paying attention for a moment, it's over. After the door opens, I try to rocket the enemies that are just standing there, but I have an absolute heart attack trying to pick the pistol up off the floor, which results in a very avoidable death. But the second time around, I position the weapon a lot better on the floor, and I just start blasting. The downside is the blasting does fire the rockets across the room, so I have to use the shotgun a bit more than I would have liked to, but at the end of the day, it's okay. I fire off a few more rockets just to kill the stragglers, since I'm playing extra safe at this point, and then I go around to the left of like the way you're meant to go to get the jump on the final few combat farms, who I rocket and then I just dash to the index, which gives me the absolute bliss of ending this painful mission. From one long mission to another, 2 Betrayals is Assault on the Control Room, but backwards, and it has some unique quirks to it. So you're supposed to spawn in with a plasma pistol to help deal with the sentinels, but the Foreign Skull takes that away from you since you can't have Covenant weapons, but you keep the plasma grenade for some reason. I don't know. Anyway, I take out the sentinels by kiting them around the room before I open the big door and end up in a big old fight between the sentinels and the Covenant. My plan here is for the explosions of the sentinel dying to take out the grunts, which will then explode and take out the elites, where I have to do essentially nothing. It's very RNG, but I only have a shotgun in this situation. I'm not overly sure how else you're actually meant to do this. The first attempt resulted in me getting rushed by an elite and dying, but on the second attempt I managed to make my way through by using some grenades to take out the enemies who come as reinforcements, and to be honest, just getting incredibly lucky with the explosions. I do not know how repeatable this is, to be honest. Sadly though, this elite survives and decides to showcase his expert dodging abilities before hitting me with the good old left-right goodnight. But on the third attempt, he fell and I was onto the door which leads to the outside. There's a trick to this which despawns the enemies, which I mess up horrendously, and I mistime the button presses, and I get a checkpoint as the door opens, which leads to me having to restart the whole mission because I'll just be stuck in a horrendous loop. Ah, fuck. It took me a few attempts to actually get back to the door, as I needed RNG to bless me. But once we eventually got back to the door, I timed it right and managed to despawn a majority of the enemies. This led me to run past the final few enemies which are left to the Banshee, which I then used to blow up the unmanned Wraith to sort of make life easy for me later, as well as collect the health and rockets, since, you know, you can never really go wrong with health and rockets. Using the Banshee to safely take out the few enemies that are there, since I actually need to fly back to the door button, as the mission will break if I don't press it again and spawn in all of the enemies. After doing this, I fly low to the left before flying up to the first generator, where again, on the balcony thing of it, there's a bunch of enemies. I just clear them out with the Banshee, no questions asked. It's sort of a theme of this level, just safely take everything out. The first generator room has no enemies in it, so I can just walk in, melee a sentinel on the way out for shield, and get a fresh new Banshee while flying to this weird land bridge thing, where you end up sort of in this room with a lot of enemies in. All the rooms in this mission look the same. I deal with this room by sort of shooting and repositioning repeatedly, however this does end in absolute disaster. Oh, you... After this disaster, I clear out the room and keep my shields high before watching a giant explosion in this corridor, which honestly just terrifies me, and it never ends, before I get the most unfortunate death to a stray needle. This room honestly took me a fair few attempts to clear out, but eventually I make it through and I get reintroduced to the Flood, because I'd missed them so much in these, you know, this sort of 20-minute window of not seeing them. I get 1v2'd by these jackals, which honestly isn't surprising. These guys are absolute demons. I do take them out and I grab health before I start spamming rockets everywhere as I make the most of my unlimited ammo. I take care of the rest of the Flood before making it onto the bridge, which honestly isn't too bad. It just requires a lot of patience, so it's sort of just me sitting back, killing things on my side, on the other side, moving forward, like, you know, over and over again. The next room is where I spent most of this mission. Everything went wrong here. That could be a problem. Okay, I fear I reset to get the shotgun, because I don't know, it seems pretty important to me. I finally clear my way through this hell, and I start firing rockets at hiding Flood, who very clearly never expected a human to have unlimited rocket launcher ammo. I get onto another bridge where another multi-faction battle is taking place, and I take out a Banshee with the rockets, since it seems to think I'm the biggest threat here for some ungodly reason, but it might be right. Oh well. A rocket flood takes my whole entire life away, but I recover emotionally from this and I clear the bridge in the following room before descending to the ground level, where the classic flood strategy of just run past them comes in clutch once again. I rocket the ghost outside the door before running past them again to go back up top to the bridge and safely take out a Banshee and a ghost. This is so I can pick up ammo and also then get in a ghost and just drive past the Wraith, because it has the turning circle of the Titanic, do you know what I mean? It starts mysteriously raining grenades on me, which jumpscares the absolute life out of me, but I persist on to ascend up this hill and begin to clear out everything up there. This leads to a giant canyon which honestly has a million things in it you need to keep track of and need to systematically clear out with the rockets and a good old trusty pistol. The aim of this sort of canyon is to take a Banshee to fly up to the second generator, but generally if you just try and rush it, it's a death trap. There's a Wraith, there's a turret, there's multiple other Banshees flying around, there's hunters. Like, the Covenant have sent out their strongest soldiers just to defend this one Banshee. I die a couple of times to the Banshee, but then I unlock my secret weapon. I changed to the new graphics. For some reason this lowers my frames to single digits, but most importantly, the Covenant don't know what's going on either, and the Banshees despawn, I think? I use this to my advantage as I clear out the surrounding areas around where I need to land before I grab a med pack and then land and start clearing out the floods waiting for me. I do some classic Halo gameplay by wedging a Banshee through the door to protect me from the horde of flood that will spawn after I take down the second generator. The second generator goes down and this room just starts throwing even more flood at me, and also one of these stupid mower statue things that I still don't understand. I utilise my parked Banshee to get a massive multi-kill and clear out everything. I then fly a different Banshee, because another one spawns in, to a locked door which doesn't open properly, but I can use the Banshee to kill anything that tries to push through, and also, in more classic Halo gameplay fashion, I can push a ghost through the door with the Banshee for even extra firepower. I go far enough up the bridge to spawn in the flood, and then safely retreat and take them out from the safety of a dark corner. This leads me to the home stretch, juggling weapons up the hill so I can rocket literally every single thing I see. There are so many enemies here that need taking out, and luckily for them, I am choosing violence today. I have to take out 2 big areas full of enemies, which then eventually leads me to a nice ammo cache, which I can just gobble up everything so I'm ready for the final bit. The map geometry strikes again as it eats another one of my weapons, which causes me to reset, and I start taking out the wraith from a distance so I can safely traverse the map. I run back to grab a ghost, which I use to zoom past all these enemies and behind some rocks, from where I can throw grenades to distract the enemies, steal the Banshee and fly away. Blocked the door with the Banshee. After I blocked the door with the Banshee, I get to the generator and it just doesn't do anything. This gives me a heart attack, but after I reset it works, I'm finally on the home straight. I can see the end. We are on the home straight. Keys is the penultimate mission where we're going to save our beloved captain from the grasps of the flood. To do this, we're going to do a little trick called Flood Bump. So it took me about an hour to learn this trick, but it's definitely worth it. The gist is that we're going to lure this harmless flood, who was just trying to spook a grunt to be honest, into a very specific spot. We will then kill him and he'll come back to life and he'll push me through the ceiling, like in his standing up animation, which skips most of the mission. To be honest, I couldn't imagine doing this without the skip, it would be horrible. But yeah, honestly, I don't know why this works. It's another one of those things. We drop back into the map and see all the enemies that are supposed to spawn later on just standing around, having the time of their lives. Every single one of these needs to be killed, which takes a good chunk of time because the flood, honestly, they are so resistant to melee in this game, it's unreal. But if you don't kill them properly, they spawn in during the cutscene and start killing you, which does happen to me, sadly, so I have to do it again. The reason this happens is because some of the flood resurrect, and there is no way to know if they're going to resurrect or not. So I sort of figure this out the second time around and start shooting the limbs off so they cannot do anything to me. After discovering Keys is one of them, we punch him in the face just like he always would have wanted, and we grenade the flood before I get introduced to some Spec Ops Covenant, of which the grunts have a cool ability of exploding not once, but twice, since their fuel rod cannons rudely decide to be unwieldable. This is sort of just the end of the mission though. I pick up a health pack, I drop down before dropping down again, kill the pilot of the Banshee and fly off to the final mission. Again, Flood Bump, remarkable trick. I'll honestly be so much worse without it. This is like the quickest mission in the game with it. The final hurdle, the final mission, we get some motivational achievements to give us a nice little boost to push down this ladder, which, you know, spawns in the flood to fight the sentinels and allows me to very safely just climb back up and wait to take out whoever is left standing. Although, the flood are the ones left standing, and they absolutely outsmart me by just not coming to me, so I go down to investigate, and they just batter me. They beat the living daylights out of me. So I reset with the shame that I got outsmarted by the AI here. I fell into their trap. I take my revenge with a grenade before I then scavenge around for a pistol and a shotgun because the AI, let's be honest, is beautiful, but it is useless. I push forward and hide next to this door because it's sort of bursts open with a bunch of flood, but you can hide from them. And you can get infection forms to come to you first, which, you know, just die with a melee hit, quite simple. And then I use a very questionably obtained plasma grenade, I don't know why I have this, to kill everything hiding around the corner in a very beautiful explosion. I grab health and ammo before tactically hiding once again from hunters this time as they start fighting the flood, which will very nicely let me just one-tap them since they'll just keep doing little spins trying to kill the infection forms. The next room has a bunch of spec op guys in it, and sadly I couldn't take out the elite with all the explosions from the grunts, and this is like my downfall. This elite became the final boss of this mission. He was determined to stop me and make this as difficult as humanly possible. If I tried to take him out from range, he would just spam grenades to no end, and well, to be honest, I didn't really have the weapons to take out his shield, never mind actually kill him. I then realised that rushing him was sort of the only option I had, but if I crossed a certain point, more enemies would spawn in, and I'd never actually be able to live, like one of them would always get me. But I had come too far to fail here. After a few more deaths, I grenaded him from a distance, which took out his shield and allowed me to get a very easy headshot on him. I then grenade the spawners, which takes out everyone but this one elite who I just sprint at with the shotgun. I've come too far to fall. I make it to the bridge where I fail to kill this elite, which eventually leads to me very sadly getting stuck, but the second time around I take out everything and I trigger the cutscene. I run away from this as soon as possible as, to be honest, I don't want to get lasered, and I end up farming the flood in this doorway as they try to rush me because they don't know what they're doing. They can't fit through more than like 2 at a time at this door. They're idiots. I run past a hunter who honestly was just chilling, and then I just keep running. I am aiming to fight as little as possible on my journey to destroy this ship. I grab a little bit of health before continuing on to whatever this room is. I think it's the spawn room from the beginning. There's a nice little jump you can do to get on top, or I had in a corner so that all the enemies in the corridor I need to go down and spawn in. However, this sort of backfires as I take out a carrier and it explodes into some grenades, it chains, it kills me, yeah. The end of the corridor is an infinite spawner which only stops when you reach a certain point, so I have to battle my way up and then retreat to clear everything out. I miss these rockets on the floor because I'm blind, but it's not really a big deal to be honest because I grabbed the overshield which just sort of lets me run past everything on my journey to the armory. Now the armory is full of rockets and sort of everything you could ever desire, but it is also full of invisible flood. And I stand around for way too long and just get jumped by these guys. But I am having a real health issue. This becomes evident in the engine room where I stand by a door and get absolutely put down by a member of the flood with a shotgun. Next time around the flood has a needler, so I lure him and use him for shield before I grab health upstairs and fight my way up to these weird shaft things that need blowing up. You can jump on the boxes to get there faster, and as soon as I press the button I run into the back rooms, it despawns all the sentinels, which sort of makes this quite free. I rocket and grenade the engine, which does damage to me and absolutely terrifies me, but I'm fine. I systematically take out all the engines and drop down to get more health. This was a terrible mistake to make, because instead of just running straight to the lift, I have to fight through the flood who just congregate in doorways. And they are just determined to stop me getting up top. After dying to a bullet fired from beyond the grave and a carrier fall exploding, I remember that I can jump up the boxes to get onto the shaft and I get to the lift. I fire a rocket in there to chain react everybody, and this one elite who has a name I forget somehow survives, but he's no match for the shotgun. We are at the end, the Warthog run to end the mission. I grab health and a Warthog to begin my journey, and I make sure to take advantage of a couple of shortcuts, because they're scattered throughout this, and to be honest, every second matters. The sentinels start attacking me and I end up on 1 HP in a dream, which sort of makes me need to pull over and melee an infection form to get shield back, otherwise I will not be making it as I take so much more damage. I drive straight past Fohammer's death, RIP, you will not be forgotten, before taking another shortcut which leads to the food nipple grunt, which not only gives me shield, but it also gives me an achievement, which is nice.
Oh, you...
On the way out, I run over a grunt, who then takes me to the grave with him. After mysteriously dying to my warthog just crashing, I make it back to the big jump again, and I actually make it down alive. I hug left at the end and go underneath since I have quite a bit of time to spare, and it is the safest route. I am not risking any death at the finish line.
I really hope I have time for this. I really hope I do. Oh yeah, I should have time, right? I only have to jump there. We did go for the style point approach on the thing, yeah. Oh, thank God for that.
I feel the weight lift off my shoulders as the screen goes white and the final cutscene plays. I'm watching Chief do his goofy little run with the biggest smile on my face.
I think I need like a 3-week mental reset, that was painful.
And next up, Halo 2. One of the hardest challenges imaginable.